think more people are leaving now because it's becoming a little bit more normalized. I think it's a reason why a lot of my Mormon friends stopped talking to me when I left, because it's not even like I think they thought I was necessarily a bad person. I think they felt like I had been infected with a poison that
the virus.
That's why they don't read anti-Mormon literature either, because it's like a virus that if you let it get hold of your testimony, you will no longer be a believer. And so it's not even worth walking down the road because you don't want to get infected. So
what was your big red pill moment?
Red pill moment. Good question. I think I just had a number of experiences where, and mine is more based in God. Like, I'm an atheist now. It's more based in my experiences with God than just Mormonism. A lot of people, they, read about the polygamy, they read about early doctrines, about what Brigham Young said about interracial marriage, stuff like that. And they leave from this organized religion is not the one for me. I want to find a different organized religion or a different spiritual path. Whereas for me, I had several experiences which led me to believe God did not exist and that I was wrong about God. And then after God fell, I was then willing to look into all of the church history stuff. So they both kind of tumbled at once.
There's a lot of people right now that think in American culture that we have like a God-sized hole. And I think a lot of people are filling in this because they, threw out the organized religion. They're filling out with this like vanilla connection to God. This is my relationship with God. That's never really made too much sense to me, but like I empathize with people that want to do that. And it does seem like the organized religions were a lot of the destructive part of religion throughout history. You chose not to have a relationship with God. Did it feel like you never had one? Did you feel like you had one and chose to leave it? What does that like actually feel like to you?
I think every time I felt like God was real, the Mormons talk a lot about something called the burning in the bosom, which is supposed to be like a feeling in your heart or in your gut that is a witness from God. So like if I'm praying, I'm literally searching and scanning over my body almost like in a meditation for some sort of feeling or like sensation that I'm then coding as God or like interpreting as God speaking to me. So like I might pray and say like, I really want to, do this as, this summer I want to go and do a trip, teaching in, whatever, Asia. Should I do that, God? And I'm praying and I just, basically just sit there and wait and see if I have a sensation in my body that I then say, okay, that was God speaking to me. So like that was my relationship with God. Primarily, I mean, doctrinally, obviously it was, I'm grateful for the God, Jesus dying on the cross. I'm grateful, for the Book of Mormon and learning about all of these good virtues and baptism, blah, blah, blah. But as far as my personal connection with God, it was very much me interpreting sensations within my body or emotions or waves of emotion as God giving me direction. And so I think the reason God was kind of easier for me to maybe be like, I don't think God exists anymore, is because as soon as you realize that I'm literally taking human emotion, which I also experience when I listen to music that I love, or when I watch a commercial about a child holding a puppy, I'm experiencing the same warm fuzzies but instead now, since I'm praying, I'm interpreting them as God speaking to me. So when that is my only proof for God, and when there's many times that I have an experience where I think God told me something and then I act on it and it ends very badly for me, or the thing that was revealed simply isn't true, at a certain point you start to have to question, is it just me? Is it just me creating these emotions in myself? And if I can feel the same feeling when I'm at a live music concert, or when I'm watching a movie that I love, or when I'm getting a hug from someone I love, and these are all the same, some people would say, that's always God speaking to you. I don't think, though, personally, that's sufficient evidence for an all-powerful being floating in the clouds. I just don't think I've ever seen sufficient evidence or proof. Anytime someone tells me a story about their religion or God, there are thousands of other explanations. I had a feeling that I should check on my baby, and then when I went in, he had something in his mouth. Well, human beings think to themselves, I should check on my baby pretty often. Human beings wonder about the well-being of their loved ones essentially all the time.
Yeah.
So I've just, every time someone tells a story about, so-and-so had cancer and then everybody prayed and then they didn't have cancer anymore. So that can't be spontaneous remission. Yeah. It has to be that there is God God somewhere in heaven and he chose to cure your cancer, but let thousands of babies die of starvation in Africa, what makes you middle-class white lady so special, so much more special than all the other people who died of cancer? Well, that was just their trial to face. Okay, well, there's no internal consistency. There's never within religion given to you a way out. It's always either God was teaching you a lesson or God was blessing you. There's never the answer, God simply isn't real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild to try and avoid that one. I find that God is often just the things we don't have the tools to quantify yet. Like in the examples you're giving, like curing cancer, it's like the placebo effect. Placebo is something that we don't really know how to quantify it. So it's hard to understand why it works. Or like one of my friends, he did a movie called I Am. It's all about like, you are the problem in the world and you're in the solution. But in it, they did this like study basically where we would be blinded from each other and we'd both be looking at screens and hooked up to like a bunch of different sensors to see our brain movement. And if I saw a bunch of like fucked up shit, your brain would light up as well. Just from us being in the vicinity togetherness, because I think there is something going on between humans that just haven't built the ability to measure. And one of the reasons I dislike using the word God to describe that is it's what we were talking about earlier. It doesn't allow you to ask the question anymore. Does that make sense? It's like, this is the answer, therefore there is no question to ask. As opposed to like, we just need to build more things so we understand the tools and understand, this sort of communication that's going on between us that's nonverbal.
Yeah, I think that's why God is kind of the antithesis of science and reason, because science is all about, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's a hypothesis, let's test it. Okay, based off that test, here's what we know and here's what we don't know. And they will, science typically, hopefully, ideally, will present to you what they know and don't know at the same time with no bias given to either. And, obviously studies are used to like try to convince people of certain things, but at its heart, science is meant to be just hypothesis, test, outcome, right? So that to me is the opposite of God, because you'll never hear a religious person like truly question in a like sincere way. It might be, well, we don't know why God did that, or God is mysterious, but that he always just still is though. And so I think that's why, if you ask someone who's a believer, what evidence would convince you God doesn't exist? Typically true believers will say nothing. And if that's the answer, I can't really help you, because you're not truly seeking information. You're seeking confirmation.